All right, get ready because we're really going to dig into this one.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking a deep dive into the world of sexual addiction today with Patrick Carnes' book, Out of the Shadows.
Okay.
And,
Big topic.
there's a lot to uncover.
Yeah. A lot to think about
Yeah.
in this one.
From the cycle of addiction to, how families get caught up in all of this?
Absolutely.
One of the things that really struck me
Okay.
about this book was Carnes' use of real stories.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is so important about this book
Yeah.
is that he's not afraid to kind of hit you right between the eyes
Right.
with the reality of this addiction.
Yeah.
He uses these stories to really draw you in and help you understand
Yeah.
the true impact of this.
And he does it right from the introduction, like right off the bat. He gives these examples that are just like,
Yeah.
whoa.
They're hard-hitting. Of
Politician forced to resign. A husband whose secret life gets exposed.
It's like ripped from the headlines.
I know, someone trying to hide their online activities.
Yep.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
And I think it just really sets the stage for one of Carnes's main points.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is that...
And the quote that really stood out to me is, one of the strongest bonds of the addiction is its secrecy.
Wow.
And that secrecy. It's not just about hiding things.
Right.
It actually feeds the addiction itself.
So it's more than just shame then.
It is.
It's like the secrecy is almost like the engine.
It is the engine.
Driving the whole thing.
That drives that cycle. That four-phase cycle that he talks about. Reoccupation, ritualization, sexual compulsivity, and then despair. And he uses the story of Dell to really illustrate this.
Oh, yeah. Dell's story is so interesting because it starts with things that honestly seem harmless.
On the surface.
Right? And then you see how it escalates.
Yeah. And that's the thing about addiction.
Right.
It can start small. And then it just takes over.
And with Dell, he ends up almost getting arrested. It really makes the cycle come alive.
Yeah, you can really see how it spirals.
You can.
Out of control.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing Dell's story highlights is how addiction really distorts your perception of reality.
Okay.
For Dell, his secret life starts to feel more real.
Right.
More important than his public life.
Oh, wow.
And that's a key part of how addiction maintains its grip.
So we've got this cycle fueled by secrecy.
Right.
But how does Carnes explain the system behind the addiction itself?
Well,
I mean, it's not just like doing something.
No, it's not just a
You're not supposed to be doing
Right.
something.
There's a whole structure to it.
Okay.
He actually has this diagram in the book,
Okay.
figure 1.1, that maps out the entire system.
Oh.
So you've got the belief system,
Okay.
impaired thinking,
Right.
unmanageability,
Yeah.
and they're all connected. They all feed into each other.
Almost like a web.
It is like a web.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that web are all these faulty assumptions and myths that the person uses to justify their actions.
Absolutely. And that's a key point.
Yeah.
It's not about enjoying sex more or being more sexually liberated.
Which is kind of a misconception.
It's a huge misconception.
Right. Yeah. People think, oh, it's just about...
Oh, they just need to loosen up.
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
It's much deeper than that.
It is.
And Carnes uses all these different examples of people struggling with this from all walks of life.
Exactly.
A traveling salesman, a music teacher, a college professor.
Yeah.
It really shows that it transcends any stereotype.
It does.
Right.
And it leads into his concept of levels of addiction.
Okay, levels of addiction.
Which is crucial for understanding just how complex this issue is.
So he talks about 3 levels.
He does.
And he's careful to point out that it's not about judging anyone.
Right. It's not about labeling people.
Right.
It's about understanding the progression and the risks at each level.
So what are we looking at with these different levels then?
So level 1 is really where those behaviors, that might be considered socially acceptable, are starting to cause distress in the person's life. Things are kind of starting to slip out of control a little.
Okay, so that's level 1.
Level 2 is where we start to see that double life emerge.
Oh, so that's where it gets really complicated.
That's where the secrecy really kicks in.
And on the surface, everything might seem fine.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
But underneath,
there's this whole other world going on.
Yeah, Carnes goes into some specific level 2 behaviors, like exhibitionism, which he says isn't always what people think. It's not always the stereotypical image people have.
And then there's voyeurism.
Right.
And what's interesting is how he talks about
Yeah.
the time and energy that consumes.
All-consuming.
I know.
Yeah.
And the isolation it creates.
Yeah. Tremendous isolation.
And he also talks about indecent calls and liberties.
Yeah.
And how these acts can escalate.
It can.
And violate others. It's a good reminder of the potential harm involved.
Absolutely.
So we've got these 3 levels.
Okay.
The cycle driven by secrecy.
Right.
And how it manifests in these different ways. But now we've got to talk about the internet.
Okay.
Because it's like, it's changed the whole game.
Oh, the internet has absolutely
Would you say it?
changed everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to this.
Okay, so we're going there next.
Yeah, it's this whole other world out there.
It's like the Wild West.
It is a Wild West.
Right.
And it can be really dangerous.
Because it's so accessible.
So accessible.
Right.
24/7.
Yeah, you can just get lost in it.
You can?
And it's easy to see how it fuels addiction.
Absolutely.
Carnes actually compares cybersex to crack cocaine for sex addicts.
Got a powerful analogy.
What makes that comparison so apt in his view?
Well, I think it's about the intensity and accessibility.
Okay.
Just like crack cocaine delivers this quick, potent hit.
Yeah.
Cybersex offers this instant gratification.
Right.
And that could be incredibly addictive.
And because it's always available.
Right there at your fingertips.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to resist those urges.
It's like it's hijacking those reward pathways.
It is in the brain.
It's hijacking your brain.
Making it even harder to break free.
Which is why it's so important to talk about the impact on families.
Right, because it's not just the addict who's affected.
It's the whole family system.
Right, and that's where co-addiction comes in.
Exactly.
Carnes uses the story of Beth and Jean to show this.
Powerful story.
It's a really powerful story. About how codependency can really destroy a family.
So they're so focused on controlling Jean's behavior that they never actually address the underlying issues.
Like putting a Band-Aid.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
On a bullet wound.
You're never going to truly heal that way.
No.
And speaking of healing, Carnes talks about these 2 core beliefs that are often at the heart of sexual addiction.
He describes them as, I am basically a bad, unworthy person.
Wow.
And no one would love me as I am.
And those are powerful.
They're deep-seated beliefs.
Yeah.
And they drive so much of the behavior.
Those beliefs often come from...
Often rooted in childhood experiences.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how they play out.
It is.
In the charts he includes about sex, men and women, and the co-addict section.
Yeah, those charts are really helpful.
They are.
For understanding how these beliefs shape not only the addict's behavior, but also the dynamics within the relationships.
So is there a way out?
That's the big question.
Yeah, I mean, is there hope for people struggling with this?
Carnes seems to believe there is.
Okay.
He talks about the 12 steps.
Okay. Yeah, he's very clear that the 12 steps
Right.
can be incredibly powerful.
Even though they were originally created for Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
He argues that they can be adapted and used effectively.
For people with sexual addiction.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is how those steps really address the core beliefs.
Oh, absolutely.
We were just talking with...
Think about it.
Okay.
Admitting powerlessness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeking a higher power. Taking a moral inventory.
Right.
Making amends.
Right.
These all challenge those feelings of being unworthy or unlovable.
It's not just about stopping the behavior.
No, it's about transforming
It's deeper.
the way you see yourself and the world around you.
And it gives you a framework
It does.
for building healthier relationships.
Which can be so hard for people with sexual addiction.
Because they've been used to relating to people in a certain way.
Right. Often their relationships are based on secrecy.
Yeah.
Manipulation.
And so to learn...
To connect authentically
Yeah.
can be a real challenge.
And it's a challenge worth taking on.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I keep thinking back to that question we posed earlier.
Okay.
How much do societal messages about sex and masculinity actually play into this whole issue?
It's such an important question.
It is.
And I think Carnes touches on this.
He does.
In the book.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to men.
Right.
The messages they receive.
About sex?
About sex.
Yeah.
About masculinity.
Equating sexual conquest with worth.
Right.
And
discouraging vulnerability.
It's just so damaging.
It is incredibly damaging.
Because you're setting up this impossible standard.
Yes, you're setting men up to fail.
It makes me wonder how much of this behavior is really about trying to fill a void.
a void created by society.
Society itself has created.
It's a really powerful thought.
It is.
And I think it underscores the need for compassion and understanding.
Instead of judgment and shame.
Absolutely.
Carnes' book, Out of the Shadows, really offers a powerful roadmap.
It does.
Not just for individual recovery, but also for understanding the societal factors at play.
And it challenges us to examine those messages.
And work towards a healthier environment.
A more supportive environment for everyone.
For everyone.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot today.
We have.
This cycle of addiction, levels of compulsive behavior, family dynamics, those core beliefs.
The core beliefs.
But now I want to dig a little deeper into something we touched on earlier.
All right, cybersex.
Cybersex,
that's a big one.
A whole other can of worms. Right, because the internet has really become...
It's become a breeding ground.
A breeding ground.
For sexual addiction.
Sexual addiction,
Offering this anonymity. Accessibility. Instant gratification.
Like never before.
Like never before.
And that brings unique challenges.
It does.
To understanding and treating this addiction.
It does.
Right, because...
Yeah, because how do you...
Like, where's the line?
Where do you draw the line between healthy sexuality... and problematic behavior?
Because the internet blurs those lines.
It blurs the lines. And because it's always available, it removes those natural barriers.
That might have helped someone manage their behavior before.
Exactly.
It's almost like having a casino.
Oh, I love that analogy.
In your pocket 24/7.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it highlights why cybersex is often compared to other addictive substances.
Like crack cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
Heroin. Yeah. All these highly addictive things.
So we've got these pre-existing vulnerabilities.
Okay.
We've got the power of the internet.
Right.
We've got these societal messages.
All converging.
All coming together.
Yeah.
Where does that leave someone?
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Who's struggling?
Yeah.
What hope does Carnes offer?
Well, he's very clear.
Okay.
Recovery is possible.
Okay.
And one of the most important messages he conveys is that seeking help is a sign of strength.
It's not weakness.
It's not weakness.
Right.
It's a sign of strength.
And he emphasizes those 12 steps.
He does.
As a path towards healing and transformation.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
Not a destination, but with the right support and guidance. People can break free from this cycle and create a life filled with authentic connection and genuine joy.
And that's ultimately the message of hope.
That is the message of hope.
But before we wrap things up completely, there's one more aspect of Carnes' book that I think deserves some attention. So we talked about the 12 steps earlier, but I think it's worth circling back to how Carnes really emphasizes their adaptability for sexual addiction.
You know what's so interesting to me is how the steps directly address those core beliefs we were just talking about.
Like they're tailor-made almost.
It's like it's a blueprint for challenging those beliefs.
So admitting powerlessness. Right. Seeking a higher power.
Taking a moral inventory.
Making the mess.
All of those things chip away at those feelings of unworthiness, of being unlovable.
It's not just about behavior.
No, it's about transformation.
Yeah, it's about
complete transformation.
How you see yourself.
How you see the world.
Your whole worldview.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it provides a framework for building those healthier relationships.
Which can be so hard.
Oh, it could be so challenging.
For people who
have been living in that world.
Right, because they've been relating to people in a way.
Right. Their relationships are often built on secrecy, manipulation.
Not on honesty.
No.
So to learn to connect authentically.
A huge shift.
It's a huge shift, yeah.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up here, I keep coming back to that idea.
Okay.
You know, how much do societal messages really contribute to this problem?
You know, it's such a big question.
It is.
And, we were talking about the messages.
Especially for men.
Especially for men.
Right. About sex. Masculinity.
This idea that you have to conquer.
Yeah, you got to be a conqueror.
You have to be sexually successful.
Yeah.
To be a real man.
And God forbid you show any vulnerability.
Right. Vulnerability is weakness.
Right.
And that's just not true.
It's so messed up.
It is. And it sets men up to fail.
It really does.
Because no one can live up to that.
it makes you wonder how much of this behavior comes from this deep pain.
Yeah.
This need to fill a void.
A void that society has created. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important to approach this topic with compassion.
Absolutely.
And understanding.
Instead of judgment and shame.
Carnes' book, Out of the Shadows, it really offers a roadmap.
It does.
Not just for individual recovery, but understanding the bigger picture.
The societal factors.
The societal factors, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a call to action.
It is. It's a call for all of us.
Yeah.
To examine those messages and work towards creating a healthier,
a more supportive
environment.
Environment for everybody.
For everyone.
So if you've been listening to this deep dive and it's resonated with you, please remember you're not alone.
You are not alone.
There are resources available.
And taking that first step towards getting support.
It'd be life-changing.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
On this deep dive into Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, this has been a really important conversation.
It has, and we
hope you found it insightful.
Insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even
a little challenging.
A little bit challenging.
Yeah, and remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
No. Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
Keep reaching out.
And reach out for support.
When you need it.
When you need it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's been a privilege to dive into this with you.
Likewise.